Hey homies, we've talked about solar returns on the channel before, and in this video, we're going to talk about how to use solar returns as a vehicle for our healing journeys. People don't immediately make the connection between astrology and healing because they're often thinking about memes, TikTok, horoscopes in the newspaper. But real talk, a good astrology reading can change your life. So, after the beat drops, we're going to talk specifically about solar returns and how they can support you on your healing journey. Let's get to it. So, before we hop into the solar returns, let's just start with how I'm defining healing, okay? So, I love Dr. Gabor Mate's definition from the book, The Myth of Normal. He says, I'm going to read from my notes. Healing is the process of reuniting ourselves with the inner qualities that still live within us as inherent possibilities. So, to me, that speaks to the birth chart, really, seeing the range of possibilities that exist in an individual for better or for worse. He also writes something like healing is finding the gold in the wound. First of all, The Myth of Normal is a phenomenal read. It's long but good. I'll probably do a review of it later, but I'm going to drop a link to it in the description so that you can check it out. Healing is finding the gold in the wound. I really love that statement. But to be able to find that gold in the wound, you must be willing, ready, and able to return to the wounded place. Solar returns support us in doing just that in a safe way that allows us to pinpoint a specific time period. So let me break that down for you a little bit. When we spoke about solar returns in a previous video, I spoke about how we have the ability to look not only into the future with solar returns, but also back into the past to see what happened in previous years. I was foreshadowing, preparing us for this very moment. You're welcome. So, in a different video, even from that one, we talked about finding trauma in the birth chart. You can look back at previous solar returns to see when those traumatic placements that highlight trauma in the birth chart are the most present in your life for a specific solar return year. So, essentially, in what year of your life is trauma coming up for you? Are these placements coming up for you? If you have the right support, as in a therapist, hypnotherapist, some other sort of counseling professional, if you have support to complement a solar return reading, then looking at solar returns from previous years can be an incredibly therapeutic experience. So I'll give you an example now from one of my own clients. So, one of my clients had a lot of repressed memories from childhood. She couldn't remember things, there were a lot of gaps. One thing she could remember was that she was a thin child, but at some point in time, she just started picking up weight. And it just so happened that a few years back, I got into this reality TV show called My 600-Pound Life with Dr. Now. And first of all, that show it's a little bit ridiculous, but it sucks you in. Anyway, one pattern that I observed while watching the show is a lot of these people who were extremely obese would say that they started packing on weight after they experienced a traumatic event. They started eating their feelings basically and started building a physical shell of fat essentially to protect them from future trauma. So I thought, maybe we can look at the solar return for when she started gaining weight to see if something traumatic happened in her life. And then we can put the story together from the solar return. So I did that. And what do you know? The year that she started to gain weight was a year when the 12th house was rising in her chart. Now, we know from previous videos that the 12th house is a house of self undoing, hidden enemies, grief, and sorrow. So, all of those issues would have been prominent for her in that year. Feeling like she didn't know who she could trust, feeling abandoned, lost, confused, troubled, going through a dark night of the soul, really. And 12th house rising years are rough on anybody. But just imagine having a year of self undoing as a child where you already have limited control over your life and you're really depending on your parents, guardians, whoever to take care of you. There were a lot of depression signatures in the chart. I saw that her third house of relatives, early childhood experiences was also emphasized, really overly emphasized. The chart ruler in the chart was in detriment and at the anaretic degree, which basically means that this person is going to have a tough time this year. It just so happened that the chart ruler was also angular, so it means that they're going to have a tough time this year and everyone is going to see it unfold. So we also in the chart saw a Venus-Pluto conjunction, which can represent early sexual maturation. Chiron and Venus and Pluto were also making a quincunx to the ascendant in the chart. And that to me represented a hidden love wounding that was taking place. For me, quincunx aspects can represent things that get swept under the rug or a can that gets kicked down the road because you're not ready to acknowledge its presence. But whatever you're sweeping under the rug is still there. The can is still there. The elephant is still in the room. It's all about repression, though. That's what a quincunx does. Is it disconnects, it represses. It's like something is present, but you're not ready to acknowledge it yet. And these are the things, quincunx things, are things that pop up and wreak havoc in your life after you've ignored them for some length of time. So you got to love a quincunx. It's a fun word to say, but it's a hard aspect to live with. But as we went through the chart, she was able to remember the wounding experience that she had as I talked through what I was seeing in it. She was molested by several of her family members, and it was painful for her to acknowledge that, even more painful for her to see how that experience shaped so many of her later experiences in life. However, this solar return reading was a turning point in her healing journey. Her healing journey had reached sort of a plateau after years of psychotherapy and taking medications as well. And she did that even after realizing that self medicating wasn't working. She went that standard route that Solange talks about in the song Cranes in the Sky, where she tried to drink it away. She tried to put one in the air. She ran the credit card bill up, tried to work it away, slept it away, sexed it away. And none of that stuff worked because she had not yet acknowledged the wound that she had experienced because she had repressed it so deeply. She really ran from it, essentially. And she was feeling guilty because she never spoke up for herself and she didn't fight back against her abusers. And I'm looking at the chart like, girl, you're in detriment. You're anoretic. Like, you didn't have any internal strength to do anything in this solar return chart. Sometimes surviving is the only thing you can do. And she did that. And while she was engaging in challenging behaviors, every behavior is useful in some context, right? So her behavior had a positive intention in that moment, and she made what she felt was the best choice available to her at that time, which was to say nothing. So I encouraged her to, consider showing her younger self some compassion and just really reminded her that she's not a failure. There's nothing wrong with her. She was just in these addictive behaviors that she was engaging in. She was really just repeating a pattern. And now that she was able to see, that the pattern served her up until a point, she was able to go forward and change that. So she began to heal those old wounds of abandonment and feeling discarded by her abusers. And that situation she experienced as a child led her to repeating those same abandonment experiences over and over again in her relationships as an adult. It presented as her dating unavailable people, engaging in addictive behaviors that we mentioned earlier, just trying to fill that abandonment wound and emotional void. By remembering those events through the solar return chart reading and the feelings that she had about those events, she was able to really sit and be present with them. Even though it happened a long time ago, she was able to begin letting go of the pain and resentment she had toward herself, her abusers, and all the other people who had disappointed her in that same way since then. She was able to accept that the situation happened, not condoning the abuse that took place, but just accepting what happened so she could figure out how to release the pain and move forward in the world as a whole person again. And she started to see a shift in her behaviors, improved relationships, improved finances, because she was willing to do the work that came with just being still, sitting with the wound, acknowledging, and being curious. When you have a good astrology reading, solar return or otherwise, you arrive at this moment of conscious awareness and you get a chance to decide which version of yourself are you choosing to embody going forward. And that's where the healing begins. One final quote from Dr. Mate. He said, "Healing brings the heart and mind into alignment and cooperation." This client's heart was hurting and her mind needed to acknowledge that pain in order for them to become aligned. And once they did, things started to improve for her. I know that was a lot, homies. If you're interested in booking a solar return reading, whether that means looking forward into the future, whatever year you want to look at, or looking back into the past, hit me up at homegirlastrology.com. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Also, feel free to share and subscribe. Peace, homies.